This was the Seawise Giant, the largest oil tanker ever built, and the longest ship in human history. At 1,504 feet long and able to carry more than 4.1 million barrels of crude, it was so massive that even the world's most important canals were effectively off limits to it. That size came with a brutal strategic price. Fully loaded, the ship could not use the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal, and its deadweight reached 564,763 tons, turning movement itself into a painfully slow, high-stakes operation. If a vessel this massive ends up inside a war zone, what happens when the threat comes not from within, but from the sky? In 1988, this ship was no longer just a commercial giant. Near Iran's Larak Island, Seawise Giant was operating in a zone tied to oil, war, and the kind of geopolitical pressure that turns vital infrastructure into immediate military targets. At that moment, the ship was being used as a floating storage and transfer platform. That sounds static, but it created a deadly problem. When warning came, a vessel in the middle of pumping operations could not simply leave the area in seconds. Stopping transfer work, securing systems, restarting boilers, and getting underway all took precious time. In a normal situation, that was procedure. In a combat environment, that delay could become the thin distance between survival and a direct missile strike. Then the attack came suddenly. Iraqi aircraft launched Exocet missiles into the area, and ships around the terminal became exposed targets. With Barcelona sunk and Seawise Giant left burning, under damage severe enough to look like the absolute end. This is where the story becomes more than a tanker story. The largest oil tanker in the world was supposed to represent trade and industrial scale, but in that moment, it became proof that energy logistics can become frontline strategic infrastructure. Even then, the ship did not disappear. After the attack, it was sold, towed away, and eventually repaired in Singapore, where extensive reconstruction included a rebuilt superstructure and nearly 20 miles of entirely new internal piping. That survival matters because it reveals something much larger. Vessels like this do not simply move fuel. They sit inside a global system where oil, money, state power, military conflict, and strategic dependence can collide with terrifying speed. And that is why Seawise Giant still feels almost unreal. It was burned, written off, rebuilt, renamed, and sent back into service as if sheer industrial scale itself had refused to die quietly. The end of the largest oil tanker in the world did not come because the ship was unimpressive. It came because the same scale that made Seawise Giant legendary also made it slow, rigid, route-limited, and difficult to fit into industry. The central paradox never went away. The ship could still carry an astonishing amount of oil, but its size restricted canals, ports, maneuverability, and flexibility, which meant commercial power came chained to logistical weakness. That is why its later life matters. Seawise Giant, Jare Viking, Knock Nevis, and finally Mont were not just different names. They marked a vessel being adapted again and again as the world changed. In the end, the ship was sold for scrap and dismantled in 2010. What remains most visibly today is its anchor in Hong Kong Maritime Museum, a relic from a machine built to push industrial ambition to its limit. And that limit is the real conclusion. The world still needs oil, but it no longer chases the most extreme version of bigger is better with the same confidence. Because safety rules, environmental pressure, and flexibility changed everything. So this giant tanker did not disappear because it was weak. It disappeared because the system around it learned that some machines become too large to adapt, too costly to reroute, and too extreme to repeat. After all the endurance of the world's largest oil tanker and its protection of the sailors, there remains another equally fascinating, naked truth. The daily lives of the men trapped right inside the belly of this beast. Inside the Seawise Giant, a relatively small crew had to live, sleep, work, and stay sharp inside a machine packed with fuel, heat, pressure, and constant risk. Every corridor, ladder, valve, alarm, and watch rotation existed for one reason only: If one layer failed, the consequence would not be inconvenience. It could be fire, collision, pollution, or a full catastrophe measured in steel and oil. And that is what makes this story so different. This is not just about a record-breaking ship, but about the hidden human reality inside a vessel too large to move casually, too dangerous to manage carelessly, and too extreme to ignore. Let's go inside the world's largest oil tanker. We'll dissect where people live, how the ship operates, and why its systems are so ruthless. On the Seawise Giant, most of the ship was not built for people. It was built for cargo tanks, pipelines, ballast spaces, deck machinery, and the hard industrial hardware needed to move crude safely across oceans. The human world was compressed into the accommodation block near the stern. That was where the bridge, cabins, galley, mess room, recreation spaces, and work areas sat, while the vast rest remained a steel landscape of industrial function. That contrast is the first hidden truth. From a distance, this ship looked like a floating city, but inside, human life occupied only a small, controlled corner of a machine built for oil. Moving through it was not casual. Going from the bridge to living spaces, control areas, or engineering sections meant climbing ladders, crossing decks, opening heavy doors, and navigating a structure whose size constantly reminded the crew where they lived. And that changes the meaning of life at sea. On a vessel like this, daily existence was shaped less by horizon and freedom and more by routines, alarms, maintenance demands, enclosed spaces, and the discipline of operating safely. International rules recognize that reality clearly. Maritime Labor Convention standards require ships to provide proper accommodation, food, rest, and welfare, because life on board is part of the operating system, not an afterthought. On this ship, scale did not create comfort. It created distance, pressure, and a strange reality where the biggest part of the ship was the part no one could truly ever relax in. But that still was not the most important part. Because on the largest oil tanker in the world, the most dangerous zone was not simply the sea outside, it was the invisible hazard traveling inside the ship. Inside the Seawise Giant, human life ran on structure, not mood. The captain, deck officers, engineers, ratings, and service crew all occupied separate roles, because a vessel this large could not survive improvisation for very long. One of the most critical figures was the chief officer. Cargo operations, deck crew management, and the ship's stability all converged at that position, which meant one person stood at the center of weight, balance, timing, and operational control. That matters because a tanker does not simply carry cargo. It carries liquid mass that shifts, ballast that must be managed precisely, and a schedule where every loading, discharge, inspection, and watch decision can affect safety across the entire vessel. A day on board was divided by watches, meals, checks, maintenance, and handovers. Life was measured in hours of work and rest, because fatigue at sea is not just discomfort. It is a direct threat to safe navigation and response. So, the crew lived inside a clock that never really stopped. Even when they were eating, resting, or trying to sleep, they were still inside a machine whose alarms, vibrations, routines, and responsibilities were always waiting behind the next door. That is why small details mattered constantly. Mess rooms, shared spaces, exercise areas, and brief moments of normal routine were not luxuries aboard a vessel like this. They were part of what kept people mentally steady inside an unforgiving environment. On this giant tanker, the easiest part to underestimate was the human factor. If one person grew tired, missed a signal, misunderstood a procedure, or hesitated during an operation, the cost could reach far beyond one mistake. And even that was only the next layer down. Because on a ship carrying millions of barrels of crude, the pressure on the crew was intensified by a danger you could not always see, smell, or control with brute strength. The most dangerous part of this ship was not its height, length, or weight. It was the fact that the ship carried an atmosphere where oil vapors and poor control could turn routine operations into disaster. That is why tanker safety is built around systems most outsiders never notice. On large crude carriers, inert gas systems reduce oxygen inside cargo tanks, making the atmosphere less likely to ignite when volatile vapors are present. But inert gas was only one layer. Venting, ballast management, cargo monitoring, pressure control, firefighting equipment, pump systems, and emergency drills all existed because a tanker this large could not depend on one defense alone. That changes how you should see the ship. The supertanker was not controlled only by engines and steel. It stayed alive through technical disciplines working constantly behind valves, compartments, and procedural checklists. And on a vessel this size, the margin for error became brutally expensive. A small mistake in monitoring, transfer, or response could escalate into fire, explosion, cargo loss, environmental damage, or a chain of failures moving faster than people. This is why tanker crews live under a different pressure. They are not just sailing a ship. They are guarding a moving energy system whose cargo can punish carelessness harder than almost any mistake on a normal merchant vessel. What few people realize is that the larger the ship becomes, the less forgiving the system becomes. On the Seawise Giant, a minor deviation could stop being minor the moment it reached the wrong tank or line. Life inside the largest oil tanker in the world was never just life at sea. It was life inside a moving system of energy, discipline, danger, and power. So if you want more hidden worlds, like the video and subscribe. And if you are curious about the most dangerous job on the deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier that almost nobody talks about, do not miss the next video, because the next hidden system is even closer to human risk. See you next time.